From an early age, I started having conversations with my children. They were simple at first, but as they grew older and began to understand that the world was bigger and more complex than they had first imagined, the conversations grew in length and complexity. Because if my wife and I had taken on the responsibility of bringing our children into the world, we at least owed them an explanation of how it worked, including how it was broken. As my daughter prepares to get married this fall, and our son passed his 18th birthday earlier this month, I pray that we did a good job of it. I pray that we still have many more years of these conversations as they work to build a career, a home, and a family of their own. One of the themes that came up often, right behind love and faith, was hope. Because, like love and faith, the presence or absence of hope will change the course of your life, just as it will alter the life of a family, a church, or a nation. It's that important. Some folks would have you believe that faith and hope are close enough to the same thing, and having one automatically ensures the presence of the other. I think we've seen too many instances, most of them too beautiful for any words that I have, where those who were without hope walked resolutely forward or ran headlong right into the face of danger. They went forward because they were still motivated by a love and comforted by a faith that granted them the peace and the courage to do extraordinary things, even after they had already lost all hope. But for hope, real hope, to be present, so many other things will have already had to have gone right for it to exist. As my children studied history and later economics, I tried to help them understand how much of these were also shaped and determined by the presence of hope. I explained that America had been blessed by geography and abundance of resources, but that was insufficient to make this land as successful as it's been. There are many other places where this is also true. I explained that we owed a great debt to the extraordinary generation at the founding of our nation that created the possibility for what we might one day become. Because in so many places where the climate was equally favorable, resources were readily available, and an abundance of human potential were also present, you could still find only devastation and misery because hope had been lost. Without freedom and expectation of safety, of stability and protection, there just isn't any reason to invest your time, your talent, or your resources into making a better life. In those places, the rules change from moment to moment, and everything that you might plant, build, or create today will just as likely be crushed, taken, or swept away tomorrow. Because that is exactly what has happened in those places, for too many yesterdays to count. In those places, nothing was ever saved or invested. At the very best, it might be hidden for a short time, but it was always a safer bet to use it or consume it right away, before it could be taken. If there was never a chance of true security and safety, having nothing left to lose also meant that you had nothing left to take. There is no tomorrow. There is barely a today. There's only now and what could be or must be done to survive. My wife has been teaching for more than 2 decades, and for every new school year that began, I could always tell you within a few weeks who would become her favorite student that year. Because it was almost always a boy, And no matter what their name, their hair color, or their talent, there was always something that they excelled at. They always had a talent, a unique gift, a desire to be the center of attention. And they always came with a warning label from the other teachers, administrators, or school staff. Everyone in the school knew who they were, because no matter what it said on their paperwork, their real name was Trouble. I'd know that boy would be my wife's favorite by the end of the year, because she'd say his name almost every day, in irritation, frustration, sometimes anger when she'd get home over those first few weeks of school. Then day by day, week by week, the sound of his name would change, because sooner or later, they'd have a day where he didn't get sent to the office. Then they'd have a day where his card stayed green all day. Then one day he'd do something, or say something, something kind, or funny, or thoughtful, and one of her coworkers would look at my wife like they'd seen a miracle, because they had. Not because my wife had been sweet, or pleasant, or gone easy on that boy, but because she had been unbending, unyielding, and fair every moment of every day that boy had seen her since the school year began. She became the fixed point in his universe by which he could begin to navigate every other part of his world. No matter how badly he acted, the rules never changed. And no matter how many times he failed, neither did her expectation that he could still succeed. She became the North Star in his life. She was there every time he looked up, watching, guiding, and constant. She noticed every time he broke the rules, but she also noticed every time he succeeded. She encouraged as much as she corrected, and you could believe that both of those things were true, because she could also be trusted. All of us can be forgiven for lying like Sarah did when the Lord confronted her in our reading from Genesis. We've all been there, in that moment of fear or anger, when we say or do something foolish even as we know it is wrong, even as we know we aren't fooling anyone. In that moment, we just react to whatever is making us angry or afraid or both, just like we did when we were a child. Most of us will beat ourselves up later. We'll think of all the clever things we should have said or done and endure the guilt or the shame of the memory until we can reconcile with that person. But for many, without understanding why, they will replay the event over and over, triggering the fear or the anger again and again, trying to justify the way they responded, trying to piece together why it made sense in that moment, even if doing so means they can never reconcile or be free of that moment ever again. Scientists will tell you we understand why that moment occurs. They will tell you that in the amygdala region of your brain, it drains resources from your prefrontal cortex, those moments when we are overwhelmed with anger or fear. We actually become less intelligent because the part of our brain that makes good decisions shuts down, even as the part that makes impulsive decision goes into hyperdrive. So we tell an obvious lie, say or do something completely inappropriate, or lash out at the thing or person that's causing that reaction. Which also explains why throwing tools when we bang our knuckles or smash our thumb feels so satisfying. It's science. It's just never going to make sense to your wife when she sees you do it, because you look just like one of her first grade students who act exactly the same way. If you've been married long enough, she'll take that opportunity to go back in the house rather than remind you that she had suggested we call a professional to fix it in the first place. But sometimes 6-year-olds of all ages just need a time out to think about what we've done, to calm down. But the science of all this has been bothering me lately, because if we don't get that time out, things can go very badly, very quickly. The science tells us that when we are inundated with messages that provoke fear, anger, stress, anxiety, or a sense of betrayal over a long period of time, it changes us. We become more prone to anxiety, depression, addiction, impulsive behavior, and an inability to form meaningful relationships. It shuts down our ability to make good decisions, to learn new skills, and to address the problems we could otherwise easily solve. It also shuts down our ability to hope. If that sounds a lot like the country we have become over the last few decades, then you might take another look at the steady stream of messages we've been consuming over that time. All of them designed to induce fear, anger, anxiety, and a sense that we've been regularly betrayed. They are also designed to get us to stay tuned through the commercial break, to click another link on the page, to stay engaged for another 15 minutes, and to tune back in tomorrow for the continuing coverage. If it's bad enough that we're consuming these messages from all over the world without a good way to balance and see context around this information, there are others among us that are experiencing these things firsthand every day. Even worse, unlike many of us that have a secluded backyard and an understanding spouse, there isn't a peaceful, nurturing place or person in their life to turn to and balance and talk them down from that experience. Their context for witnessing the images that create fear and anger are the places that they live, work, and navigate through every day. If you know the rest of Sarah and Abraham's story, then you know that when we lack faith, have given up hope, and have lost trust, we can make a lot of bad decisions trying to manage the outcome for ourselves. In those times, it feels like it will take a miracle to put things right. Luckily for Sarah, God provided that miracle, even as she had no hope in the beginning. Just as Jesus provided the miracle, even for those of us who are powerless and still weighed down by sin. He reminded us that there really was a fixed point in our universe that allowed us to navigate the rest of our world in a new way. That no matter how many times we failed, He was still ready for us to do the right thing. And He was patient enough not to change the rules on us before we finally got there. He was ready and willing to lay down His life so that we could have that chance. He taught us that no matter how angry or hateful we became, we could never defeat the enemies of hope by those means. But neither were we ever too late to be saved, redeemed, and made new once we embraced love and grace. There are plenty of good reasons to be angry, afraid, or bold with what is going on in the world. There are reasons why each one of us might feel betrayed by the things being said and done, as everyone looks to deflect blame and take advantage of an opportunity to keep or to seize power in the turmoil. But our call as Christians is to keep our hearts, our minds, and our ears open, even as most of those around us have become overwhelmed by the flood of voices and images, all of them designed to keep us angry, afraid, and unable to think clearly, because it is robbing us of the capacity for faith, hope, and love, minute by minute, day by day, and year by year. We cannot turn away from the world. It needs us more than ever. But to truly see it and to have an opportunity to help it, we must first make the space for hope within ourselves before we can give it to others. We must look to all of God's creation with empathy, with love, and with the intention of making room for them in the kingdom of God. We must stand with grace, perseverance, and a capacity to suffer so that the truth will be known. I ask you to consider these words from Matthew 10, which were also listed in our lectionary readings for this Sunday. Hear Jesus' words for us, written centuries ago and set aside years in advance, so that they would meet you here in this moment, so that you would have a clearer understanding of God's plan and a sustaining hope for your part in it. Jesus said, I am sending you out like sheep among the wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. You will be hated by everyone because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. So do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the roofs. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Amen.